A single father, once a decorated Navy diver, now a high school janitor, arrives quietly at his son's graduation. Humble, exhausted, unnoticed. Until an admiral in full dress uniform catches sight of a familiar tattoo on the janitor's forearm. One worn only by men who survived a classified rescue mission years ago. A mission that changed the course of naval history, and that the admiral himself had ordered. What follows is a breathtaking unveiling of honor, sacrifice, and a father's silent journey to see his son rise higher than he ever could. Before we dive in, where are you watching from today? And if stories of silent heroes, hidden sacrifices, and unforgettable justice resonate with you, please take a moment to subscribe. It truly helps keep these stories alive. The moment the security guard shoved him, the crowd gasped, but no one stepped in. "Sir, I've told you twice already." The guard snapped, blocking the entrance as though protecting something sacred. This section is for families of honor graduates only. Maintenance staff need to wait outside. The father steadied himself, fingers gripping the strap of the old canvas backpack hanging from his shoulder. He said nothing. He never did when insult cut this deep. But there was a flicker, just a flicker, of pain across his weathered eyes. His name was Caleb Rourke, a janitor by uniform, a ghost by presence, a storm by memory. He had come only to see his son walk across a stage, a moment he had worked night shifts, weekends, and holidays for. But now, here, publicly, a guard was shoving him away like an uninvited intruder. A cluster of parents turned to look, murmuring softly. Some seemed troubled. Others looked away, pretending not to see the humiliation. And then came the line, the one that struck deeper than any blow. "Your kind needs to stay in the back. Your kind." He felt the words hit the way cold seawater hits open wounds. Fast, unforgiving, stinging in places long believed numb. Caleb breathed slowly. The old training whispered to him from somewhere buried, "Don't escalate. Don't give them reason. Silence is strength." But the guard wasn't done. "Leave now, or I call for removal." It was then, just as Caleb lowered his gaze, that a voice rose from the far end of the arena. A commanding voice. A voice that made decades of protocol ripple through the crowd like a sudden wind. Who just said that? And every head spun. An admiral was walking toward them. Admiral Jonathan Aldridge moved with the steady authority of someone accustomed to oceans answering to him. His dress whites were immaculate, his medals blazing against the soft light of the gymnasium. He had attended as an honored guest, an unexpected addition to the graduation program. But as he approached, his eyes were not on the stage. They were fixed on the janitor. More specifically, on the janitor's forearm, where a faded tattoo peeked from under a rolled sleeve. Not a common tattoo, not decorative, not new. It was the ink worn only by the few who survived Operation Siren's Gate, a rescue mission so classified that it rarely entered casual conversation even among the highest ranks. Only 8 men survived that mission. 7, the Admiral knew, had died years later, lost to injuries, illness, or the silent battles no medal guarded against. But the 8th, he had disappeared. Caleb Rourke had never been meant to become invisible. He had once been a young diver with the Navy's most elite underwater rescue unit. Fearless, loyal, sharp as a blade under pressure. His hands had once been steady enough to repair equipment in pitch black water, resilient enough to pull strangers from nightmare currents, and deadly enough when survival demanded it. He had been part of the team sent to rescue trapped crew from the crippled submarine during Siren's Gate. He remembered the smell of fuel slick on the waves, the cold that ate through gear, the screams that carried from inside the metal tomb beneath them. He remembered hauling survivors up one by one while the hull groaned in its death throes. He remembered the explosion. The world had gone white, then black, then silent. When he woke, he learned he had lost 3 teammates, men closer than brothers. Their absence never stopped echoing inside him. He also learned he had gained something he hadn't expected: a newborn son. His wife, Alina, had gone into premature labor during the mission. She survived the delivery but not the night. The Navy gave him compassionate discharge. A nation thanked him. A folded flag saluted him. But none of it mattered, because the only thing left worth living for was swaddled in his arms, fragile, warm, breathing. Caleb traded oceans for mops, medals for minimum wage, classified missions for graveyard shifts. He promised he would give his son a life untouched by his own shadows. Everything he did, every sacrifice, Every exhausted morning, every skipped meal, every unnoticed piece of silent heroism was for the boy he loved more fiercely than he ever loved himself. Now, standing in the graduation arena, Caleb kept his voice steady. "I'm just trying to see my son," he said quietly. The guard folded his arms. "And I'm trying to stop you from disrupting a formal ceremony. Maintenance should use the service entrance." A few parents shifted uncomfortably. A couple students stared with pity they didn't know how to express. Caleb swallowed. He had weathered far worse storms than a security guard's contempt. But somehow this hurt deeper. Maybe because today wasn't about him, it was about his son. He tried again. "My son is graduating with honors. That section is reserved for families who contributed to the scholarship fund." The guard said flatly. "You clearly didn't." Not a single person spoke in Caleb's defense. The silence hurt most. It always had. Because silence, empty, complicit, judgmental, was the same silence he had heard after leaving the Navy. The silence of neighbors treating him like damaged goods. The silence of employers choosing younger applicants. The silence of people who didn't understand invisible scars. Silence had shaped him. And yet, silence was also his weapon. The Admiral finally arrived beside them, the crowd instinctively parting. "Let him pass," he said. The guard stiffened. "Sir, he's staff, and he refuses to show a pass." The Admiral didn't respond immediately. Instead, he reached toward Caleb's sleeve and gently pulled it back, as though unveiling an artifact of ancient power. There it was. The ink. The symbol only a handful on Earth recognized. A stylized gate of broken steel, surrounded by waves. The mark of the Siren's Gate survivors. The Admiral inhaled sharply. "Where did you get this tattoo?" he asked Caleb. Caleb's eyes dropped. "Long time ago, sir. A different life. Look at me," the Admiral whispered. Caleb did, and for the first time in years, someone looked at him not as a janitor, but as a man with a story worth hearing. A ripple spread through the crowd. Whispering. Confusion. Curiosity. Bystanders leaning closer without stepping forward. Caleb felt the weight of unwanted attention settling on him, but he refused to speak. Silence, he reminded himself, was composure. The Admiral studied him with growing disbelief. "You were on the gate." Caleb didn't confirm or deny. He didn't need to. His silence spoke louder than any salute. The Admiral glanced at the guard again. "You owe this man an apology." The guard blinked. "Sir, he's a janitor." "No," the Admiral said softly. "Who's a hero hiding in plain sight?" Parents stared. Students whispered. Faculty members exchanged startled looks. But Caleb remained still, unshaken, as though he expected nothing and needed even less. The Admiral turned, motioning to an aide nearby. "Bring them." Them. Caleb frowned. From outside the gymnasium came the sound of hurried footsteps. A cluster of uniformed officers entered, bearers of medals, stripes, and reverence. They moved with purpose, forming a half-circle near the stage as if assembling for a ceremony yet unannounced. Caleb's breath hitched. He knew these faces. Or rather, he knew the ghosts behind these faces. Men who wore rings engraved with the same symbol. Men who had served beside the fallen seven. Men who had attended funerals Caleb couldn't bring himself to face. His hidden allies. The Admiral stepped forward, raising his voice so the entire auditorium could hear. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, "before this ceremony continues, I must address a grave misunderstanding." A hush fell, heavy, expectant, electrified. "This man," he said, placing a hand on Caleb's shoulder, "is not merely a custodian. He is not someone to be dismissed, shoved aside, or spoken to with disrespect." Caleb winced. He wished the ground would swallow him whole. Attention was never his desire. But the Admiral continued. "This man is Caleb Rourke, survivor of Operation Siren's Gate. A man who has saved more lives than most of us will ever know. A man who risked everything so strangers could breathe again." Gasps filled the air. The guard went pale. The Admiral's voice grew steadier, carrying a weight that made the silence lean in. "There is a saying among the old rescue divers. The deepest sacrifices surface in silence. This man represents that truth." Caleb wanted to protest, to shrink back. But the Admiral wasn't speaking for him. He was speaking for something far larger. "Today," the Admiral said firmly, "we honor not just his service, but his strength as a father. Because his son, Michael Rourke, graduates today at the top of his class." A stunned murmur spread like a wave. Michael, seated among the graduates, rose involuntarily, eyes wide. He had no idea what was happening, but his heart felt like it might leap from his chest. The Admiral looked at Caleb. "You will sit in the front row. You will watch your son's moment without interference. And you will do so as an honored guest of the United States Navy." The guard swallowed hard. "Sir, I didn't know." Caleb finally spoke. "That's the thing about people, son. You never know what storms they've survived." The line settled over the audience like a profound weight. Soft, heavy, powerful, shareable quotes. Naturally woven, Caleb added quietly, "Respect isn't earned by titles. It's earned by how you treat those you think have none." Another hush. Another ripple. The Admiral murmured, "Some heroes leave the service. But the service never leaves the hero." The officers assembled near the stage didn't approach Caleb directly. Instead, in a breathtaking moment of solidarity, they silently, sharply, perfectly aligned. Every single one. The audience rose. First a few, then dozens, then the entire auditorium. An arena filled with civilians stood in complete silence before the janitor who had once breathed death to save lives. Caleb's eyes stung. Not because he wanted recognition, he never had, but because his son saw it. Michael stood amid his fellow graduates, tears streaming openly, pride swelling so powerfully that he trembled beneath his gown. For the first time, he saw his father not as the tired man who mopped floors, but as a man who had carried oceans on his back. When the graduation continued, Michael's name was called last. Not because he was least, but because the entire ceremony had been rearranged on the spot. He approached the stage. The Admiral handed him his diploma. Then he stepped aside, because this moment was not his to own. Michael turned to his father, and in front of everyone, he wrapped his arms around him tightly, fiercely, unashamedly. "You never told me," he whispered. Caleb exhaled. "Son, you were the only thing I never regretted. Everything else didn't matter." The auditorium erupted, not in noise, but in a renewed standing ovation, respect deeper than applause, honor deeper than words. Long after the ceremony ended, people approached Caleb to shake his hand. Parents, students, teachers who regretted never knowing the quiet man who cleaned their halls. But Caleb didn't stay long. He preferred the shadows, the quiet corridors, the peace. Yet as he walked out arm in arm with his son, the Admiral spoke one last time. "You may leave the uniform behind, Caleb, but never again your worth." Caleb nodded, overwhelmed, humbled, changed. The story of a janitor had ended. The story of a silent hero had surfaced. And those who witnessed it would never forget. If this story moved you, I'd love to hear where you're watching from today. And if you want to honor more unsung heroes through stories like this, please subscribe and share your thoughts below.